Alright, welcome to our podcast, Barely Even Friends. I'm joined by Michael today. We're going to be talking about why you shouldn't be a Marxist, Leninist, tanky, blah blah blah, authoritarian, piece of shit. Introduce yourself, sir.
Okay, so I'm Camel. What? Huh? What? Thanks. I'm Camel, and I am somewhere between anarchist, communalist, and Marxist-Leninist. Somewhere in there, because I don't know. I recognize the use of organizations.
Like you had Marxist, Leninist instead of instead of just saying Marxist.
I guess Marxist. So I recognize the use of organizations as an expression of power, and the use of political power as something that can be good, I guess. I don't really want to say good, but I don't know any other words for it. And at the same time, I'm still skeptical of power, which is very centrist of me. But hey, you know, it is what it is. So I read a lot of Bookchin, and by a lot I mean some essays and stuff, and I kind of agree.
I feel like most people just pick whatever identity got led you the first
yeah,
exposed
that's pretty much it. Not that interesting.
Is that true in your case?
No. Kinda, but no. I've always been kind of against authority and power, because I've been on the receiving end of it a couple of times in ways that I just, didn't really like. And I don't know. But at the same time, I went through this little phase where I was a anarcho-communist. I was an ANCOM. And then I read some Bookchin. And I was like, hey, I see this shit going on. Where Bookchin was talking about, like, individualist anarchists being
it was also
the big thing in the American left.
The longest time.
Or at least in American anarchism. And he also had criticisms for... Yeah. But he was also pretty critical of, like, anarcho-syndicalists. But he still used the things that they went through and things that they learned and stuff that they did as a useful tool for teaching people. So, anarcho-syndicalism is kind of like, trade unions run everything, kinda. So, his idea is that trade unions themselves, even anarcho-syndicalist ones, would still have that whole competition going on, and competition would basically be like, people trying to be better than one another, trying to one-up one another, and that's not really useful for socialism. And it's also not really useful for the environment, because on the one hand, you could be competitive in terms of competing to create better and more efficient systems of production. But if you do it in the capitalist mode, then these systems become... How do I say this? So under capitalism, right, the natural resources of the world, the ecologies and all this stuff are getting simplified. Whereas previously they were really complicated and diverse and all this stuff. And you had, you would have very tough ecologies across the world. And then capitalism comes along and simplifies them. And you can see the effects of this on people and the ecologies, but generally people, in the Dust Bowl in Oklahoma in the 1930s. So what happened was we started doing a lot of monoculture. And the issue with monoculture is that while on one hand it produces a lot of food, it depletes the soil and makes the crops less resilient to issues, threats that might spring up. So, if you only produce corn, then something could come along and very easily fuck up your corn. And, so that's one problem with capitalism in the way of how it simplifies ecologies, because it makes these ecologies less resilient, and this is mostly because capitalism is still... I know, but capitalism has put it on in such a way that it happens far faster than we can really
before it was affecting mostly Europe, where they're
deal with.
Deforesting their land.
It puts it across the entire planet.
And then they're mostly growing one crop, and they're having terrible yields, and yeah.
And then they come over here, and they deforest the living shit out of it. However, we can't fall into the trap of saying that, the Europeans deforested all of America, because in fact, what actually happened was, Native Americans, centuries or thousands of years ago, I'm not totally certain on the time.
That's how the Great Plains
It was pre-Columbian. Burned down the forest that was going from fucking East Coast to West Coast. Yeah, that's how the Great Plains were made. And they would drive enormous herds of buffalo off of fucking cliffs and shit. Far more buffalo than was necessary to actually feed people. And mammoths. I mean, yeah, mammoths, but I'm talking more a little bit more modern. In the AD. But also this shit was probably happening in the BC, for sure. And there's evidence of enormous fucking wildfires happening in pre-Columbian times when humans inhabited North America. And so clearly it's not only capitalism, which is one of the things that Bookchin said. It's the idea that humans can dominate nature, but we can't, And yeah, we are literally nature. We could be perceived as the experiential part of nature. Nature that experiences itself. So we're not separated from it. There's nothing that separates it from us. And capitalism has worked its way into our brains and polluted our minds with filth that tells us that actually no, we can just do whatever the fuck we want to nature, and as long as it's scientifically all cool and shit, then we can do it. But issue with that is that 200 years ago, people weren't as aware of this people weren't as aware of ecology as they are now, right? So there's a problem. But his critique of anarcho-syndicalism would basically be that since it's based on competition still, it would still have it would be more cooperative than capitalism, but it would still have facets of competition where firms are competing against one another. And this is not good. It's not good for people. It's not good for the environment.
It's not the same thing.
If it's not good for the environment, then it's definitely not good for people either way. Yeah. Co-ops are a method for getting the means of production into the hands of the workers, but it's not the end-all be-all. It would have to be a multifaceted, societal change. Which, of course. I mean, even if you read Marx, Marx talked about how societies change over long periods of time, and the difference with capitalism is that capitalism accelerates the tempo of history or something like that, such that things happen faster. So, whereas feudalism might have taken about 1,000 years to build itself and then collapse, capitalism might take a few hundred.
It depends.
Well, it's been going for, about what, 400 or 500 years.
But it wasn't the dominant.
But for a while, it was like
the 1800s.
Well, I would say capitalism as basically the exploitation of labor based on like wages and shit like that, with the bourgeoisie owning the means of production. And we could track different bourgeois classes, rising and then collapsing, and then eventually there comes enough quantitative changes in society that the fucking seesaw flips in the other direction, and now it's capitalism. And this would probably have happened a little bit before the French Revolution, But the French Revolution would basically be the ideology of capitalism taking primacy, I would think.
Like birth,
right?
To be honest. Like modern liberalism. And like leftism itself, because French Revolution had like a lot of leftist, like socialist, like undertones and like beginnings, where they experimented quite a bit.
Yeah.
The French Revolution's like the.
You sounded like a robot there. I made no fucking sense of what you just said.
Experiments going on.
Oh. Yeah.
Because capitalism was like already existing.
Yeah.
But the French Revolution is like the birthplace of like actual liberal idea. That's why they were like invaded immediately by all the great powers of Europe, and the monarchy's trying to restore King Louis.
Yeah. 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 Because the whole thing with societies changing over time is that it's not a clean thing where there's distinct phases. You can't just divide it up into distinct phases. There's not a phase where, suddenly feudalism is gone, because you've got remnants of feudalism existing to this day in capitalism. You've still got countries where there are peasants.
Ancient slave societies, yeah.
Yeah, there's still slavery. And that's a remnant of slave societies from thousands of years ago.
The First Revolution added,
Yeah. So, even in the free world, there's still fucking...
They added the ideas of equality, the rights of man, free education for everyone, and meritocracy-based promotions in the military and like other government positions. Like the whole foundation of liberalism is like in the French Revolution, along with like socialism as well. I see socialism as like the next evolutionary step of liberalism, where you actually fulfill the promises of liberalism of equality and like freedom for all. Fuck, oh well. Pretty much what I said, it might have been...
I'm having a hard time understanding you. See if my phone needs help.
Pretty much what I was saying. I was saying,
okay.
The French Revolution's like the birthplace.
I'm just moving my
like,
phone to get better reception, hopefully.
As, like, universal education, like the rights of man, equality. They actually ended slavery in like everywhere in France, like the colonies. Yeah. And like socialism is like the evolution of liberalism, fulfilling the promises of equality among men. Because capitalism is inherently unequal. Like socialism builds on the ideas of liberalism and freedoms.
Yeah, except I just still fucking, yeah, yeah.
It's okay.
That, you still sounded like a fucking robot. I'm sorry. My cat is meowing at the door. I'm gonna let her in a moment.
Welcome back.
Alright. I return. There's a kitty. And she just escaped.
She hates you, Camel.
Okay. So,
Fix your cat.
no, she's just so horny. She's just rolling around on the floor all the time. I probably should. But she's so fluffy. I love her. So. Yeah. One of the things that Marx talked about was quantitative changes. Adding up, and then eventually you get a qualitative change. You know, so if you have enough proletarians, eventually you're going to be getting like proletarian movements, because they begin to recognize their material interests rather than just fighting amongst themselves over fucking, oh, these immigrants are doing this and those immigrants are doing that, they're all taking our fucking jobs. Eventually, because of how capitalism works, this isn't going to happen as much, and people are going to become more woke, I guess. Right? Yeah. Now she's rolling around on my feet. Oh, hi, baby. Yeah. Based. I love it. Yeah. And this happens in a lot of things. Like, for instance, I'm not going to use the analogy that Marxist Paul used, but instead, I'm going to say, okay, so you're made up of atoms, right? Now, these atoms, if you take any single one of these atoms, none of these atoms are you. But you're still made up of all of them. You know, you are more than the sum of your parts, I guess. But you are still the sum of your parts. So, and I guess we could use the analogy that Marxist Paul used. Was it Marxist Paul? Was it him, or was it the person? I don't know. Think of a pan of water, right? And this pan of water it's got fire underneath it, and eventually the heat builds up. These are quantitative changes. The amount of energy in that water rises and rises and rises, and then eventually it begins to boil. And that boiling is when it has a qualitative change. This is a part of dialectical materialism, which I'm trying to understand a little bit better. Hi, Luna. I also named my cat Luna, so yeah. It is a good name.
As you were saying.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand dialectical materialism a little bit better, because it seems pretty useful in understanding things.
Isn't it basically
Because if you can get that, then you can get basically everything else. The issue is that it requires a lot of reading.
And then the contradictions have to solve their issues to order to exist. So the contradictions
do what?
End up eventually canceling each other out or being solved.
Yeah. So what this kind of leads into is conservative socialism. Because they're trying to test the waters. They're taking their fucking thermometer out, they're putting it in the water. They're trying to measure what they believe the temperature of the water to be. Okay? So then they adopt these positions of upholding family values, for instance. Well, family values, why do they exist? They exist to uphold capital. Family values exist because because capitalism requires a system where land can be inherited from parent to child. Otherwise, traditional property rights, as they have been for the past few centuries, cease to exist, and they become something completely different. Okay? So why would you uphold family values? Right? It just seems it's like, okay, so we're going to keep these parts of capitalism purely to appeal to conservatives, when you're not trying to appeal to conservatives, you're trying to appeal to workers, and workers don't have fucking property. Workers aren't the ones with private property. You're appealing to fucking spooks in their brain. You're not appealing to their material interests. So if you appeal to their material interests, which is the abolition of private property, then there you fucking go. You're way better off. Because as long as you educate them on what their material interests actually are, which is the abolition of private property, then over a long enough period of time, they're going to begin to actively support their own material interests. Whereas today, they are just generally not.
Socialism will fundamentally change the family dynamic. Being like pro-family values is anti-communist.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, but at the same time, it's also a waste of fucking time. Because if communism changes the dynamic of family and how that relates to property rights and private property, then it's kind of like you're wasting your breath on someone who's about to die.
I want to keep things basically the same.
You know?
Like some minor tweaks, I guess. Yeah. It makes them feel good, I guess. I don't know. I think it's easy.
Yeah, they want to uphold it.
I think the justification is
why do they want to uphold it?
Maintain the status quo. With
okay, they might
compromises than to do the hard thing and actually fight for progress and movement forward. That's being a coward, to be honest.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
It's apparently contradictory to be a.
If the ultimate aim is to fight for progress and move forward, then why not fight for progress and move forward? And then maybe, just, yeah, like, of course. But like, let's go through the logic of this, right? If the position of communism is to overthrow the existing order of things as they are now and replace them with something completely different, why uphold existing things if you're just going to overthrow them
really don't want communism either.
Later? Yeah, well, of course. Because what some of these people are is they're not actually communists. They're reactionaries. I'm not going to say they're fucking feds, but I'm sure one
Well,
or
in the
two of them
Communist
are.
Manifesto, it talks about reactionary socialists
At
who
least.
are socialists
At least
in name,
two.
but they want to maintain the damaging it problem of. Let me find the quote from the Principles of Communism.
Yeah. Like, how are these people going to solve the abolition of the commodity form? How are they going to do it? Right? How are they going to do that? How are they going to get rid of wage labor? Well, if you read Paul Cockshott, you can do that in literally the same exact move.
And they want to go backwards.
You just replace money with labor vouchers. And this gets rid of the commodity form and wage labor.
Principles of Communism, reactionary socialists.
Yeah. It's horseshit. It's nonsense. It's fucking stupid, crazy, insane shit. Yeah.
Probably.
They're idiots. Or they're very intelligent and they know what they're doing, which is probably what they are.
Which has already been destroyed and still being daily destroyed by big industry and world trade and their creation, the bourgeois society. This category includes from the evils of existing society, the feudal and patriarchal society must be restored because it was free of such evils, and one way or another, all their proposals are direct to this end. The category of reactionary socialists, for all their seeming partisanship and their scalding tears from misery of the proletariat, is nonetheless energetically opposed by the communists for the following reasons. It strives for something which is entirely impossible. It seeks to establish the rule of aristocracy, the guildmasters, the small producers, and the retinue of the absolute and feudal monarchs, officials, soldiers, and priests. A society which, to be sure, free of present-day evil, but which has brought about as many evils without even offering to the oppressed workers the prospect of liberation through a communist revolution. 3. As soon as the proletariat becomes revolutionary and communist, the reactionary socialists show their true colors by immediately making common cause with the bourgeoisie against the proletarians. It's also fascism, to be honest. Yeah.
Yep. And in modern days, this is expressed as fascism.
You can't be a conservative and be a socialist.
Yeah.
It's like a contradiction.
But
like
they didn't have fascism back then, in the 1840s. Yeah. Yeah, because socialists want to... Yeah. Because if communists are progressive and conservatives are anti-progressive, then what do you end up with? You end up with anti-progressive.
So, like, you apply negative and a positive,
at that point, you don't end up with, or rather, you end up with the status quo. Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
Oh, it's like those fucking babies on Twitter saying
she's so precious.
Democratic Socialist, the word was invented by the CIA, but it's literally in the Principles of Communism, where it's like, they talk about it. It's like, are you fucking idiots? Do you guys not read Marx and Engels?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, on the one hand, I understand what they say when they say things like, oh, the CIA basically made every operational path towards communism, like, taboo, right? That's why a lot of Americans are anti-authoritarian. But I think that the best way would just to be discard the concept of authoritarian and libertarian, because, let's face it, revolutionary is authoritarian. Revolution itself is authoritarian as fuck. Okay, you're taking shit from people.
Change, yeah. And
you are changing things
done by a minority.
You know, without everyone's consent. Yeah. Well, you're not really forcing society to change. You are. Yeah.
You actually think
well, the proletarian revolution would be a majoritarian revolution, which would be
Or
a
like
first.
a majority. It'd be a minority of highly active people and individuals pushing things forward.
Not right now.
No, and like in every revolution,
Yeah,
most people don't give a
if
shit.
you're
Though.
a
Most people
if
just
you're
worry
a
about the
vanguardist, I
lives.
guess.
It's not like a small group of people who are bored.
But the revolution, I'm looking for a generalist one, where it's
That's why it's usually young people, and people with like wealth or like
I guess.
time who do revolutionary stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, baby. You're a good girl. Yeah. I'm just petting her belly. She's just being precious. Yeah, I can kind of see where you're coming from, but at the same time, I think that, what we think of as revolution, it's not going to be like the French Revolution. It's going to take a long time, because the real revolution
No,
of
capitalism still went on
capitalism
for a couple
was
of
not the
like,
French
century.
Revolution. That was
World
just
War
the
I was
nail
like
in the
the
coffin
of
for feudalism.
feudalism.
Okay? The real revolution... I know, but what I'm
The
saying
French
is
Revolution
that
was, like,
French Revolution was
the
not
French Revolution is like the birth of liberalism and capital.
the thing that made capitalism exist. I mean, obviously.
I think well, yeah, because like basically the French Revolution was the birthplace.
So
of, like,
instead,
it was the manifestation of capital.
yeah, it would be this superstructure changing because the economic base is changing. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is that the real revolution is not going to be a fucking American Civil War II. That's not going to... No. It's not going to be like that. Yeah. It's not going to be anything like that. What's going to happen is you're going to have people changing towards socialism and enacting socialist policies and socialist viewpoints in their own world. Not even necessarily because they're being led by a vanguard party, but because, I mean, that might happen in some cases, but in a lot of other cases, this probably might not happen. You know, because not every country became capitalist in its own way, or in the same way, rather. They all had their own different kinds of capitalism springing up. Alright, so when I say this would be a generalist revolution, this wouldn't be like all the people getting together one day and deciding, oh, we're going to become a fucking communist country. This would be more like, you'd have like communist revolutions here and there, but in other places you'd have
that's the fucking
the economic base changing. Being, you know, take out one part and replace it with socialism here. Take out another part, replace it with socialism there. No. I'm not saying reformism. I'm saying that the change in some places is going to be gradual, and the change in other places is going to be rapid. And then eventually, you get to a point where the change becomes like cemented in place, and there's no going back. Okay, and I think somewhere in there, that's when the bourgeois state loses its grip on power, on being able to suppress socialism. And then, it's also going to happen probably when climate change is in full swing and killing fucking vast swathes of people all the time, and no one can ignore it.
You could have just said how
except the bourgeoisie.
Feudalism to capitalism didn't happen like
right.
A day.
Am I making
over a series of like centuries? Like there's experiments of capital in like certain areas, they fail, rise, or whatever, get repressed. But at the same time, you have like experiments of socialism, like at the same time as the experimentation of capital. But like the society wasn't like, ready enough, I guess, for that type of socialism. I guess. Yeah, that's why it was repressed by the feudal lords.
Well, the first time capitalism was tried, society wasn't ready for it. But the capitalists learned valuable lessons. Right? So that's why I view socialists and communists as being in the same position as capitalists were back then, or I guess proletarians being in the same position as capitalists were back then, or bourgeois were back then, because
So it's
you
like,
know you start out with like very little power, but you have lots of potential power, because the proletarians can just stop fucking theoretically. Yeah, they could just go on, like, we could just have a global fucking strike tomorrow if everyone decided to, and the planet would collapse. It'd be replaced by a fucking black hole, alright? We would nuke each other, go insane. But, that's not gonna happen. But I'm just using that as an example of, like, that's proletarian power right there.
Well, I was gonna say, during the...
Right, so as more people unplug from capitalism and plug into socialism,
Black Death,
then you get socialism.
Like, a lot of people, like a third of Europe to like half the population of Europe died. You had the wages increasing for the serfs, and they gave them a shit ton more power.
There's a third.
And it was like the first kind of inklings of like capital and into feudalism, and like the bourgeoisie was starting to rise and gain power, and so they were repressed by the feudal lords. And like they made laws to like make people forced to like be in certain types of jobs, so people couldn't like build wealth and like move forward. Yeah.
Yeah, they started structures and stuff. And then, but they also had other laws where, like, if you were a peasant and you came to the city and you lived there for a day in a year, or some variation on something like that, then you were a free man. And instead of being tied to the land, you were tied to the wage. Because now you'd be working for these bourgeois in their little firms. You'd be making wages. And that's the little birth of capitalism right there. And this is pre-industrial and all that stuff, obviously. This is like 13th, 14th, 15th century, where these experimentations, or these experiments are first being carried out, and people aren't even conscious of it, really. So I think one of the weird parts is that now we're conscious of it. We're conscious of the changes that we can make, but we're also conscious of the fact that individually we can't change anything.
And that's why you have to work together.
So I think that's where defeatism comes from. Yeah, because when people say like, "Oh, you have to build the world you want to see," I mean, yeah, thanks, fucking bougie prick, but yes, that is literally true. People will inevitably build the world that they want to see, the world that aligns with their material interests. It will just be an enormous struggle with lots of bloodshed. And this is why I think that trying to appeal to conservatives
with fascism
is not the way, because it's just it's opportunism. Yeah, and it really risks fascism. Super fucking bad.
Hitler was actually a socialist type of shit. The Nazis were socialists. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we don't need those fucking people. Fuck them. Fuck them. Let those people die of old age. Fuck them. I don't give a shit. Send them to the fucking nursing homes. And then eventually they'll die and no one will say that shit anymore.
Yeah. This is why we
Yeah, because their fucking boomer dads say that shit.
Failing these people. I don't know what to say. I don't think you can teach
education reform, so people can do a little bit of that critical thinking.
The bourgeoisie has torn away the family, its sentimental veil, and has reduced the family relation to a mere money relation.
Yeah. Yeah, they basically turned women into prostitutes. And then they complain about communists having like a bunch of, we're just gonna, I don't know, turn all the women into prostitutes. It's like, bro, we don't even want money. Fuck that.
The
Luna.
bourgeoisie has disclosed how it came to pass the brutal display of vigor.
So we got our cat a collar.
In the Middle Ages.
My roommate was walking around outside and he found a collar on the ground and he was like, hell yeah.
Full indolence. It has been the first
What?
to show that man's activity can bring about its accomplishment of wonder surpassing Egyptian pyramids, Roman aqueducts, Gothic cathedrals. It has conducted expeditions that put in the shade of all exodus of nations and crusades. The Communist Manifesto. Yeah, the bourgeoisie cannot exist without the instruments of production. What the fuck? What
Yep.
society do you actually want to conserve? Like, shit sucks.
Yeah.
People make new, better shit with free time.
The only good thing is like music and stuff. And poetry.
People actually have free
You know,
time to make cool shit.
like that's the only really good thing that. Yeah, I know, but like that's about it. I mean, all the stuff that is worth conserving is shit that literally can just be
all my
archived.
culture, all my history.
You know, that's shit that all these fucking stupid fascists complain about. You're destroying our statues. It's like, dude. I mean, culture. It's like, bro, culture changes. First of all, you think fucking 400 years ago German culture was the same as today? Like, come on. Think it was the same as 100 years ago? Come on, get fucking real. It was not the same. It's not even the same fucking 50 years apart. There's, you know, bits that remain, obviously, but it's not the same. What the hell are you doing?
Get her fixed.
Why are you... What? I'm so confused by this cat. She's rocketing around my room. Yeah. But she's so cute. Okay, never mind. I'm not gonna look at her. Okay.
So the whole point of the vanguard is to move the revolution forward, right, and progress. But if you are conservative, isn't the whole point to let society stay the same?
Yeah, it's all...
What
It's
do you
all
want to talk
bullshit.
about next? About what? Everyone knows Stalin.
I don't know, someone's criticizing Stalin.
I don't know, maybe. Did they have running water in Russia then?
It just said Stalin was stinky. Yeah.
Did they have running water in Russia then?
I don't know. Do what? They do now. But before Stalin, I don't know if they did. Not much.
Is there anything else you want to
Anyways,
talk about?
I don't know. That's really all I had to say. All that stuff. Because those are ideas I've been like kind of forming. Not really.
Well, it's been fun.
I'm hungry and I got to
Listen
do
our
some
podcast.
stuff. So yeah.
Like, comment, subscribe. Do you want to shout anything out, Camel? Tell people to do something? I don't know.
Yeah. I will be on this. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Proletarians of the world unite. That's all I can really say. Because in one way,